CreepyCorner stories.
Hey everyone, welcome back to CreepyCorner stories. You know, diving into the dark web is always risky, but sharing these stories with you makes it worth it. I'm curious, where are you watching this from right now? Let me know in the comments below. I've noticed that these kinds of stories hit differently depending on where you are. It might even make the experience a little creepier. So, tell me, are you watching from the safety of your home or somewhere less secure? I asked advanced AI on the dark web what happens after death. Its response was, people don't die, they hide. Alright, so I never thought I'd actually write this down, but after what happened last night, I feel like I have to. I don't know if it's paranoia, sleep deprivation, or if I've really seen something I wasn't supposed to. But if something happens to me, at least there'll be a record. For context, I'm a tech guy. Not like one of those elite hackers in movies, but I know my way around coding, cybersecurity, all that. I do freelance programming, and sometimes, when work is slow, I mess around with stuff I probably shouldn't. Not illegal things, just the kind of stuff that makes you question reality. This all started about a week ago when I came across a thread on an old tech forum. It was buried under years of posts, mostly dead links and outdated discussions, but one comment caught my eye. If you really want to know what happens after death, ask the AI, but don't say I didn't warn you. It had no replies, no context, just that sentence. And below it, a Tor link. Now, I've been on the dark web before. Nothing crazy, just curiosity, browsing forums, looking at those creepy marketplaces filled with listings that you really don't want to believe are real. But this was different. I copied the link, booted up my VPN, ran Tails OS on a USB, basic dark web safety, and clicked. The page that loaded was simple, just a black screen with a blinking cursor and one line of text. Ask your question. At first, I thought it was some kind of joke, maybe a chatbot, but I figured, screw it, and typed, what happens after we die? The response came instantly. People don't die, they hide. I stared at the screen, expecting more, but nothing happened. The cursor just blinked, waiting. I typed again. What do you mean? The screen flickered for a second. Then, a new message appeared. They are watching you. At that point, I was done. I closed everything, shut down my laptop, and even unplugged my webcam, just in case. It wasn't just the words that freaked me out. It was how fast it responded, like it was anticipating my questions before I even typed them. I didn't touch my laptop for the rest of the night. But when I woke up the next morning, things got weirder. I had an email, a new email, no sender, no subject, just one sentence in the body. You shouldn't have asked. My stomach dropped. I checked the email's metadata, trying to track where it came from, but there was nothing. No IP, no location, just blank. That doesn't happen. Even with encrypted messages, there's always something to trace. At this point, I was unsettled, but I still told myself it was just some elaborate prank. Maybe someone on that forum had set it up for people like me who were dumb enough to follow the link. That's what I thought, until I went to Starbucks. It was about 3 p.m. the next day. I was meeting up with my friend Jake, another tech guy, to tell him about what happened. The place was packed. Typical Starbucks scene. People on laptops, influencers taking pictures of their overpriced coffee, some old guy reading a newspaper in the corner. I sat down, pulled out my laptop, and as soon as I opened it, my screen glitched. Not a normal glitch. It was intentional. The same black screen from the night before popped up. "We warned you." I slammed my laptop shut. My heart was racing. I looked around, trying to see if anyone was watching me, but everyone was just normal, except for one guy. He was sitting 2 tables away, dressed in black, staring straight at me. Not at his phone, not at a laptop, just me. And the second I made eye contact with him, he stood up and walked out. I didn't even think. I grabbed my stuff and followed him. Outside, it was busy as hell. Cars honking, people walking past, typical city noise. But the guy was moving fast, weaving through the crowd like he knew I'd be following. I tailed him for about 2 blocks before he turned into an alley. When I got there, he was gone. No doors, no fire escape, no way he could have just disappeared. But the alley wasn't empty. There was a phone, an old flip phone, just sitting on the ground, screen cracked, buzzing like someone had just called it. I hesitated. Every part of me was screaming, "Don't touch it." But I picked it up anyway. As soon as I did, the screen lit up with a message. "Turn around." I didn't. I ran. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt like someone was in the room with me. I triple-checked my locks, covered my webcam with duct tape, even left the lights on. Then, at exactly 3:33 a.m., my phone buzzed. A new email. "You can still walk away. Forget what you saw. Forget what you asked, or we will make you forget. I don't know what I got myself into. I don't know if this is some advanced AI experiment, some deep web cult, or something worse. But I do know one thing. They're real, and they're watching me." The night after I got that email, I stopped feeling real. You ever get that sensation, like your body is moving, but your mind is still catching up? Like everything around you is just slightly off. That's how I felt, like I was lagging in my own reality. I barely ate, barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that message. "Forget what you asked, or we will make you forget." I tried to tell myself it was a prank, that someone was messing with me, but my gut told me otherwise, and my gut was right. The man in my apartment. That night, I stayed up late, doom scrolling on my phone, trying to distract myself. Around 2 a.m., I decided to shower, just something to calm my nerves, reset. As soon as I stepped into the bathroom, I noticed something. The shower curtain was closed. Now, I don't leave my curtain closed, ever. I have this weird habit of keeping it open so I can see the whole tub. It's stupid, I know, but something about a closed shower curtain in an empty bathroom freaks me out. I stood there for a second, staring at it. The air felt heavy. My ears started ringing, that high-pitched static noise that drowns out everything else. I reached forward and yanked the curtain open. Nothing, just my empty bathtub. I exhaled, shaking my head. I'm losing it. But when I turned around to grab a towel, my stomach dropped. There was water on the floor. Not from the shower, not from me. A set of wet footprints, leading from the tub to the door. My heart slammed against my ribs. I hadn't showered yet. There was no reason for there to be footprints, and they weren't mine. They were too big. I grabbed the nearest thing I could, a cheap pair of scissors from my sink, and stepped out of the bathroom, heart pounding. My apartment was silent, too silent. I moved through my living room, my grip on the scissors so tight my knuckles turned white. The air was thick, like someone had been breathing in the room just seconds before I walked in. And then I saw it. My front door was unlocked. I swear to you, I locked that door. I triple-checked it. But now, it was just slightly open, like someone had walked out and didn't bother shutting it all the way. I rushed to the door and slammed it shut, locking every possible bolt, then ran to my windows, still locked. No signs of a break-in, but someone had been in my apartment. The footage. I didn't sleep at all that night. At 6 a.m., as soon as the sun came up, I grabbed my laptop and checked my security cameras. I don't have a fancy system, just a basic indoor camera in my living room that records whenever it detects movement. I pulled up the footage from the night before. At 2:09 a.m., while I was in the bathroom, the camera glitched. For exactly 23 seconds, the footage cut to static. When it came back, my front door was open, and a man was standing in my living room. He wasn't looking around. He wasn't moving. He was just standing there, facing my bathroom, watching, waiting. My blood turned to ice. The footage jumped again. 5 minutes missing. Then, he was gone. The door was left open, just like I found it. I replayed the video over and over, trying to see his face, but he was standing just out of the camera's range, a dark figure, his features blurred, like he didn't belong in the frame. I wanted to throw up. I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and left. I didn't care where I went. I just needed to be somewhere else. I ended up at a McDonald's on the other side of town, sitting in a booth, my hands shaking as I scrolled through my phone. Then I got another email. Running won't help. I looked up so fast, I felt my neck crack. And that's when I saw him, the man at McDonald's, 3 tables away. A man in a black hoodie, staring at me, not eating, not drinking, just watching. It was the same guy from the Starbucks. My stomach twisted. I couldn't breathe. He knew where I was. I forced myself to stand, gripping my phone so hard my fingers hurt. As soon as I moved, so did he. He stood up slowly, like he wanted me to see him do it. I didn't wait. I bolted out the door and into the parking lot, nearly slipping on the pavement. I ran to my car, fumbling with my keys, and then he was behind me. I don't know how he moved that fast, but suddenly he was right there, just inches away. I swung my bag at him, backing up, but he didn't flinch. He just stood there, tilting his head slightly, like he was studying me. Then, in a calm, empty voice, he said, "You already know too much." And then he smiled. I don't remember getting into my car. I don't remember driving. I just remember shaking the whole way back to my apartment, my brain screaming that I had just barely escaped something I didn't understand. The missing people. I spent the next 24 hours locked in my apartment, trying to make sense of everything. That's when I decided to dig deeper. I started searching online for similar experiences. People who had used AI on the dark web. People who had asked the same question I did. That's when I found the missing people. There were dozens of cases. People who had gone on forums, asked the AI about death, and then just disappeared. Their accounts were wiped, their posts deleted. The only traces left were comments from other users asking what had happened to them. And the creepiest part, the last message every one of them had posted was always the same. People don't die, they hide. I don't know what to do anymore. I don't feel safe. I don't feel alone. Every time I close my eyes, I see that man's face, his empty stare, his smile, and deep down, I know This isn't over. They won't let me walk away. Because people don't die. They hide. I don't think I'm real anymore. That sounds crazy, right? But listen, I mean it in the most literal way possible. Something has been happening to me. Something I can't explain. And I don't think I'm me anymore. Let me start from the last moment I remember being normal. After that night at McDonald's, I barricaded myself in my apartment. I pushed my couch against the door, covered my windows with blankets, and sat in the corner with a kitchen knife, like some lunatic waiting for a home invasion. But nothing happened. No emails, no knocks at the door, no glitching screens or shadowy figures. Just silence. For a second, I thought maybe it was over. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. Then I got a call. Not from a number. Not from a contact. From my own phone. The caller ID just said, me. My heart nearly stopped. My hands were sweating so much that my phone almost slipped from my grip. I didn't answer, but I shouldn't have let it go to voicemail. A new notification popped up. One new message. I hesitated, then hit play. The voice on the recording was mine, but I wasn't speaking. I was screaming. Agonized, raw, inhuman screaming, like something was tearing me apart. I dropped the phone. My whole body was shaking, nausea twisting in my stomach. I felt like I was going to pass out. I deleted the voicemail immediately, but before I could process anything, my phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. I didn't want to listen. I knew I shouldn't listen, but I hit play anyway. This time, there was no screaming, just breathing, shallow, wheezing, distorted, like someone was speaking through a broken radio. Then, a whisper. You're not supposed to be here. I shut off my phone and threw it across the room. And that's when I noticed something. The timestamp on the voicemail. 3:33 a.m. That wouldn't be weird, except for one thing. It was only 11:45 p.m. The message had come from the future. The deleted files. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the corner, staring at my phone like it was going to come to life and kill me. At sunrise, I grabbed my laptop. I needed to find answers. I went back to the dark web, searching for any trace of the AI I had spoken to, anything connected to that phrase. People don't die, they hide. But something was wrong. All the forums, gone. All the threads, deleted. The accounts of the people who had posted about it, wiped, like they had never existed. It was like someone had gone through and erased everything. No, not erased, rewritten. Because in place of those posts, there were new ones, fake ones. People posting as if they were the original users, saying things like, that dark web AI stuff is a hoax. I made up the whole thing for internet clout. None of it was real. Move on. But I remembered those posts. I had read them. I had saved screenshots. And they weren't fake. Someone, or something, was altering reality. That's when I realized something horrifying. If they could rewrite posts, if they could erase people, then how could I be sure they hadn't already done it to me? The missing girl. I needed proof. Something tangible. I started searching news archives, crime reports, missing persons cases, anything connected to strange disappearances. That's when I found her. A girl named Ava Sinclair. She had gone missing in 2021 after posting on a tech forum about a dark web AI experiment. Her last message. People don't die. They hide. And then, she vanished. No leads, no witnesses, not a single trace of her ever existing. I tried to find her family, friends, anyone who might have known her. Nothing. It was like she had never been born. That's when I made my biggest mistake. I typed a name into Google, and my screen went black. The man with no face. At first, I thought my laptop had crashed, but then something loaded. A live video feed. At first, I couldn't tell what I was looking at. The camera was shaky, dark, moving through what looked like an abandoned building. Then the camera panned up, and my breath caught in my throat. A girl was standing in the middle of the room. Long, tangled hair, wide, empty eyes, lips moving soundlessly. She looked dead. No, worse than dead. She looked like she had been forgotten by time. The camera zoomed in on her mouth, and finally, I could hear what she was whispering. People don't die. They hide. I slammed my laptop shut. My hands were trembling so hard, I could barely breathe. Then I heard a sound outside my window. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, deliberate, like fingernails against glass. I didn't want to look. I knew I shouldn't look, but I did. And standing outside my second-floor window was a man with no face, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, just smooth, pale skin, stretched tight like a mask over his skull. He raised one hand and waved, the final warning. I don't remember what happened next. I must have blacked out, because the next thing I knew, it was morning. The window was closed. No footprints. No signs that anyone had been there. But my phone had one new message. No number. No ID. Just a single sentence. This is your final warning. I don't know what's happening to me. I don't know if I'm still real. But I do know one thing. I was never supposed to ask that question. And now, they're making sure I forget the answer. I don't think I exist anymore. I know how that sounds. I know how crazy it is. But if you've been following everything that's happened to me, if you've read every word of my story, you'll understand why I'm saying this. Something is wrong with reality, and I think I'm next. Let me tell you what happened after I got that final warning. The black car. I didn't leave my apartment for 3 days after that message. 3 days of silence. No phone calls, no emails, no knocks at the door. But I wasn't relieved. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Then, on the 4th day, I saw the car. It was parked across the street. Black, tinted windows, no license plate. It just sat there, engine off. At first, I thought I was being paranoid. It's just a car, right? Maybe someone visiting a neighbor, maybe an Uber, but it didn't leave. I watched it all day, and by 3 a.m., it was still there. Not once had I seen someone get in or out. Not once had the headlights flashed or the doors opened. It was just watching. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined that faceless man standing in my room, that smile, that wave. By morning, I decided to test something. I went outside. I didn't look directly at the car. I just acted normal. Walked down the street like I was heading to the gas station. But the second I stepped onto the sidewalk, the engine started. Low, humming. I froze. Then, slow as death, the car rolled forward. Not fast, not aggressive, just matching my pace. I turned a corner. It turned a corner. I crossed the street. It U-turned. It was following me. I ducked into a 7-Eleven, my hands shaking as I yanked open the door. The cashier barely looked up as I rushed to the back, pretending to browse energy drinks. Through the window, I saw the car stop. Then, after a long, sickening minute, it drove away. I waited in that 7-Eleven for an hour. I walked home the long way, constantly checking behind me. The car was gone, but when I got back to my apartment, My front door was unlocked. The wrong reflection. I knew I had locked it. I knew it. But at this point, second-guessing myself was normal. I stepped inside. Nothing looked different. Nothing looked out of place. But the air felt wrong, stale, thick, like someone had been standing there, breathing. I checked every room, every closet, under my bed. Nothing. Then I went into the bathroom, and my reflection was delayed. I swear on my life, when I lifted my hand to my face, the reflection took a half-second too long to move. I stumbled backward, my brain screaming that something was wrong. I turned away from the mirror, gripping the sink. My chest felt tight. I looked back. My reflection was smiling, but I wasn't. I ran. I grabbed my car keys, my wallet, and bolted. I didn't care where I was going. I just needed to leave. The forgotten city, I don't remember how long I drove. Maybe hours, maybe minutes. I just picked a direction and floored it. At some point, I realized I was the only car on the road. No headlights, no taillights, just darkness. The further I went, the worse it got. Streetlights flickered out as I passed. Houses looked abandoned. Some had doors wide open, swinging in the wind. Others had windows shattered, like something had broken in. It was like I had driven into a town that had been left behind. Then my headlights hit something, a sign on the side of the road, and my blood turned to ice. It said, "Welcome to Ava Sinclair's hometown." The missing girl, the one who disappeared after talking to the AI, the one whose existence had been erased. I slammed the brakes. My hands were shaking as I stared at the sign. Then, in the distance, I saw something move. A silhouette. Not walking, not running, just standing, watching. I threw the car in reverse so fast, I almost tore the gear shift out. Tires screeched as I spun around, speeding back the way I came. But the further I drove, the less I recognized. The roads were different. The turns were wrong. Every street I took led me back to that same spot. The sign, the figure. Only this time, there were more of them. The erased Ava was the first, but she wasn't the last. All around me, in the shadows, figures were appearing, silent, watching. Their faces were wrong, not blurred, not distorted, just unfinished, like someone had forgotten to finish drawing them. And then, all at once, they moved, not towards me, not away from me, just shifting, like they were flickering between realities. And that's when I realized these were the others, the ones who had asked the question, the ones who had tried to find the truth. They weren't dead. They had been removed, erased from existence. They weren't ghosts. They weren't living. They were forgotten. And I was about to join them. I don't remember getting back in my car. I don't remember driving. I just remember the sound. A whispering, endless static. 1,000 voices saying the same thing. People don't die. They hide. And then, blackness. The last warning. I woke up in my apartment. My door was locked. My car was outside. No signs that I'd ever left. But my laptop was open. And on the screen there was a new email. No sender. No subject. Just 2 words. Final notice. I'm losing time. I'm losing memories. I don't know how much longer I have before I disappear like the rest of them. But if you're reading this, you've already seen too much. They know you're here. And if you ask the question, if you try to learn the truth, they will come for you too. And when they do, you won't die. You'll hide. I don't know how much longer I have. My reflection still smiles when I don't. My phone rings without a caller. My emails disappear the second I read them. I've been leaving notes for myself, writing things down, just in case I wake up one day and I don't remember who I am, because I know that's what's coming next. I'm being erased. The vanishing begins. It started the morning after I got that final notice email. I woke up with a headache so bad I thought my skull was splitting in half. My ears were ringing. My skin was cold. And then my phone vibrated. I grabbed it, hands trembling. There was a notification from my bank. Your account does not exist. I blinked. I tried logging in. Invalid credentials. I tried resetting my password. No account found. My stomach turned to ice. I went to check my email, but when I opened my inbox, it was empty. Not like someone had deleted my messages. Not like I had been hacked. No, there was no trace that I had ever made an email account in the first place. Like it had never existed. Like I had never existed. No one remembers me. I ran outside. I needed proof that I was still real, that I wasn't losing my mind. I needed to talk to someone. Anyone. I went to my neighbor's apartment first, banged on the door like a madman. After a few seconds, a woman opened it. She looked at me like I was a stranger. Can I help you?" she asked. I swallowed hard. "It's me, Matthew. I live right next door." She frowned. "I don't know you." I laughed, a dry, shaking sound. "Come on, I've lived here for 3 years." The confusion on her face deepened. "No one lives next door." I felt my blood freeze. I turned and looked at my apartment door. It was right there, number 207. I pointed at it. "That's my place." She hesitated, then slowly shook her head. "That apartment has been empty for months." I felt like the ground beneath me was tilting. My head was swimming. I started, but my voice caught in my throat. I pushed past her and ran. The police report. I needed official records. Proof. Something I could hold on to. I went straight to the police station. The second I walked inside, I felt eyes on me. The receptionist barely glanced up. "Can I help you?" I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. I think something's happening to me. My identity is disappearing. My bank account is gone. My neighbor says I don't exist. I hesitated, licking my lips. "I just need to file a report." She sighed. "Name?" "Matt Spencer." Her fingers clacked against the keyboard. Then she frowned. "There's no record of a Matt Spencer." I felt something in my chest snap. I leaned forward. "That's impossible. Check again." She did. Nothing. I turned around, scanning the room. My eyes landed on a bulletin board covered in missing persons posters, and that's when my stomach dropped. Ava Sinclair was there, but the date on her poster had changed. It didn't say she went missing in 2021 anymore. It said she went missing yesterday. I took a slow, shaking step backward. Reality was changing. Time was shifting. They weren't just erasing me. They were replacing me. The false life. I ran out of the police station like a lunatic. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. I just ran. And that's when I saw something that made my heart stop. A man was walking down the street. My age, my height, my building, wearing my clothes. And when he turned to look at me, he had my face. I staggered backward. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. The man, the thing wearing my identity, just smiled. And then he whispered, "People don't die. They hide. The ones who watch." I ran. I ran so fast, my vision blurred. I don't remember how long I ran, but by the time I stopped, I was standing in front of a library. I don't know why I went inside. Maybe I thought I could find something there, some record, some proof that I had ever been real. The place was nearly empty, just a few people scattered at tables, lost in books. I went to the computers and typed my own name into a search engine. Nothing. Then, on a whim, I typed, "What happens after death?" For a split second, the screen flickered, and then a page loaded. A forum, hundreds of usernames, hundreds of people who had asked the same question, and next to every username, a status. Some said active, some said inactive, but most of them said erased. And then, at the very bottom of the list, my username appeared. Matt Spencer. Processing. My lungs collapsed. I felt something behind me. A presence. I turned around. Every single person in the library was staring at me, not blinking, not moving, just watching. I stood up, chair screeching against the floor. The librarian, an old man with hollow eyes, smiled. And in that voice, the same voice I'd heard in my emails, in my phone calls, in my nightmares, he said, "You weren't supposed to ask." And then everything went black. The last memory. I don't know where I am now. It's cold. It's dark. I can hear whispers, echoing in the distance. I think they brought me here. I think this is where they send the people who know too much, where they send the people they erase. I don't know how long I've been here. Time doesn't work right anymore. But I do know one thing. They've already replaced me. If you see someone who looks like me, talks like me, lives where I used to live, it's not me. It's one of them. And if you ever find yourself on the dark web, staring at that blinking cursor, if you ever feel tempted to ask the question, don't. Because once you ask, you don't die. You hide forever. Girls are always coming home with my roommate, but I've never seen them leave. I found out on a dark web live stream why. I never really thought much about my roommate's love life. I mean, I noticed things. Sure, girls would come over, but I never saw them leave. I figured they were sneaking out while I was asleep, or maybe just leaving early in the morning when I wasn't paying attention. It wasn't really my business. But then I started really paying attention. Let me back up. My name's Ethan, and I live in a 2-bedroom apartment in downtown Chicago, not far from a Starbucks I go to every morning, and a McDonald's across the street. That's basically my second kitchen. My roommate, Jason, is the kind of guy who looks like he belongs in a frat, but never actually went to college. Clean cut, good looking, the type of dude who wears expensive cologne even when he's just sitting at home. We met through a Craigslist ad about a year ago, and at first everything was normal. Then I started noticing weird little details. Jason would bring girls home all the time, like at least 3 or 4 a week. Always different girls, never the same one twice. They were usually young, pretty, and dressed like they had just come from a club. I'd hear them laughing, the sound of heels clicking on the hardwood floor, the occasional muffled conversation through the walls. But then, nothing. I'd never hear the front door open again. No footsteps leaving. No Uber pulling up outside. It was like they just disappeared. At first, I figured I was just being paranoid. Maybe they were leaving super early. Maybe I was just too deep in my own world to notice. But the thought wouldn't leave me alone. So, one night, I decided to test it. Jason had brought home a girl named Ashley, petite, blonde, the kind of girl you'd see on Instagram, posting Starbucks cups, and Coachella outfits. She seemed tipsy, giggling as Jason led her inside. I was in the living room pretending to watch Netflix, but really, I was keeping track of every sound. I heard them go into his room, the door shut, soft talking, then silence, and that was it. I stayed up all night, sitting on the couch, scrolling through TikTok, waiting for the moment she'd leave. But she never did. The sun came up. Jason left for work like nothing happened. And Ashley, gone. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. I started paying even more attention. Every time Jason brought a girl home, I kept track of the time, the sounds, the sequence of events. And every time, the same thing happened. They came in, the door shut, silence. Then Jason would leave for work the next morning, and the girl was just gone. One night, curiosity got the best of me. I waited until Jason left, then knocked on his bedroom door. Nothing. I turned the handle. It was locked, of course, but something about the room felt wrong. Like the air around it was heavier than the rest of the apartment. I told myself I was being crazy, that there had to be a reasonable explanation, but then I found Jason's laptop, and that's when things got really fucked up. Jason had left his laptop open on the coffee table. It was just sitting there, screen still glowing. It was locked, but he wasn't exactly the genius type. I figured his password wouldn't be too hard to crack. I started with the obvious ones: his name, his birthday, variations of password 123. Nothing worked, but then I tried something I saw once in a hacking video. I checked the underside of the laptop, and there it was, a sticky note, slightly worn, with a string of numbers and letters. It worked. The desktop background was black. Just plain, empty black. No files on the desktop, no cute photos, nothing. Just a single folder in the bottom corner labeled Project 98. I clicked it. At first, it seemed normal. A bunch of video files, some text documents, a few images. But when I opened the first video, my stomach dropped. The screen was dark at first, just grainy night vision footage. Then, slowly, a shape started forming. A person. A girl. She was in a small, windowless room, sitting on the floor with her arms wrapped around her knees. Blonde hair. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. She was wearing the same dress Ashley had been wearing the last time I saw her. My brain went static. She was still here. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, my whole body suddenly freezing cold. The girl was rocking back and forth slightly, her breath coming in shaky gasps. Then, she turned towards the camera. Her lips moved. She was saying something. I turned the volume up. Please let me go. I won't tell anyone. I swear. Please. Then, the screen went black. I scrambled through the other videos. Each one was the same. Different girls, different nights. The same room. Some were crying. Some were screaming. Some were just sitting there, completely silent, like they had given up. I could barely breathe. Jason, fucking Jason, was keeping these girls somewhere in our apartment. I felt like throwing up. I felt like running, but I couldn't, because now I had to know. I went to the text files next. They were logs. Entry, July 12th, 2023. Subject number 14, Kelsey. Arrived 2:34 a.m. Initial resistance high. Sedated with 2 milligrams midazolam. Day 3. Minimal food, hydration, 250 milliliters daily. Day 6. Subject began begging. Tried to claw a door. Day 9. Stopped eating, staring at camera for prolonged periods. Day 12. Disposal arranged. Entry, September 5th, 2023. Subject number 19. Ashley. Arrived 1:48 a.m. Initial resistance. Moderate required restraints overnight. Day 4. Begging, alternating with bargaining. Day 7. Stopped crying, mostly unresponsive. Day 9. Disposal scheduled. Disposal. I was shaking so badly, I could barely control the mouse. The last few entries didn't even have dates, just numbers, details. I needed to find that room. The door. I started searching. I tore through every inch of the apartment, opened closets, checked under the furniture, even knocked on the walls like some kind of detective in a horror movie. Nothing. There was no way there could be a whole separate room in here. Unless I turned to Jason's bedroom, the one place I never checked. My hands were sweating. My pulse was hammering in my skull. I pressed my ear against the door, half expecting to hear someone breathing on the other side, but there was only silence. I tried the handle. Locked. But I had an idea. Jason had this weird habit. He always left a spare key inside his work shoes, by the front door. I don't even know why I remembered that, but at that moment, it felt like divine intervention. I grabbed the shoe, reached inside, and there it was, a small silver key. I turned the lock, barely breathing. The room was empty, just a normal bedroom. Bed, dresser, TV on the wall. Nothing suspicious, nothing weird, but I knew better. I walked inside, scanning every surface. The closet was packed with clothes. The nightstand had some cologne bottles and an old iPhone charger. It was almost too normal. And then I saw it, the rug in the middle of the floor. It was slightly off-center, like it had been moved recently. I grabbed the edge and pulled. A metal handle was built into the floor. Number. I did not want to open that door. I did not want to see what was underneath, but I had no choice. I pulled. The hatch creaked open. A ladder led straight down into pitch black darkness. The smell that hit me was so overwhelming, I almost gagged. It was damp, metallic, something rotten, something dead. I climbed down. The first thing I saw was a camera, mounted on the wall, a little red light blinking. And then, the room. Concrete walls. A single mattress on the floor, stained and sunken in the middle. Chains bolted to the wall. A metal bucket in the corner that smelled like weeks old piss. And in the middle of the room, a girl. She was curled up, wearing a dirty tank top and shorts, her hair matted, her skin covered in bruises. Her eyes flickered open when she heard me, but there was no reaction, like she was already dead inside. I stumbled backward, bile rising in my throat. This was real. This was actually fucking real. Then, behind me, a noise, a click. The camera turned. Jason's voice crackled through a hidden speaker. "You shouldn't have done that, Ethan." My stomach twisted into a knot so tight, I thought I was going to pass out. Jason's voice, smooth, calm, the same voice he used when he talked to Uber drivers or flirted with baristas, was crackling through some hidden speaker. "You shouldn't have done that, Ethan." I turned so fast, I almost lost my balance. My hands were slick with sweat, my pulse pounding so hard in my skull that for a second, I couldn't even hear anything else. I looked up toward the open hatch, but the dim light from the apartment above barely reached into the basement. Jason wasn't here. Not physically, at least. The camera in the corner whirred softly as it refocused on me. That red light blinked, steady and slow. And then, bzzzt, a second red light flickered on, then a third, then a fourth. There were more cameras, hidden in the corners, tucked into the ceiling, barely visible in the darkness. They had been here this entire time, watching, recording, and then I realized something even worse. I wasn't just being watched, I was being broadcasted. I turned toward the girl in the middle of the room. She hadn't moved. She was just staring at me, her hollow eyes fixed on mine, her lips cracked and dry. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't crying. She knew. I took a step toward her, my hands shaking. "Hey," I whispered. "I'm gonna get you out of here, okay? Bzzzt." A TV screen mounted on the far wall flickered to life. Static at first, then a dark blue background, a symbol in the middle, a black, faceless silhouette with a white smile stretched across it. And then the chat popped up. Thousands of messages. Streaming. Live. User. Crimson Eye. 666. Oh shit. New guy just found a room. LMAO. User. Bone Collector. 97. $500 says Jason gets him first. User. Dead man typing. Get the axe. Boy. User. Nyx Nocturne. Let the girl eat him instead. She's probably hungry. My lungs stopped working. Jason wasn't just kidnapping these girls. He wasn't just keeping them locked up in some underground nightmare. He was broadcasting it. A fucking dark web live stream. The realization hit me like a sledgehammer. The camera, the logs, the girls that never left. The way Jason always seemed so comfortable, so casual, like nothing he did ever really mattered, because to him, it didn't. This wasn't just some sick fantasy. This was business. I looked back at the screen. More messages flooded in. User, the Reaper returns. Turn the lights on. Let's see his face when he figures it out. A soft click. And then, floodlights. Blinding, sterile white light burst from the ceiling, illuminating every inch of the basement. I staggered back, shielding my eyes. My shadow stretched long and jagged against the concrete. And then I saw it. The other door. Metal. Thick. Bolted shut. It had the same symbol from the screen burned into the surface. The faceless smile. It wasn't just a room. It was a holding cell. For what? I didn't want to know. But the chat did. User. Lively Glover. Open the door. Let's get the main event started. User. Slice of life. Come on, man. Don't be a pussy. We paid good money for this. User. Gut feast. Fresh meat. I stumbled back. I needed to run. I turned to climb the ladder, but slam. The hatch above me slammed shut. The locks clicked into place. And then, Jason's voice. Again. But this time, it wasn't coming from the speaker. It was coming from behind me. I turned around so fast my vision blurred. Jason was standing in the doorway, smiling. He wasn't alone. Two men stood beside him, tall, built like bouncers, their faces half hidden by black ski masks. One of them was holding something, a crowbar. The other, a machete. Jason stepped forward, adjusting his tie, like he was about to go on a fucking job interview. You know, he sighed, shaking his head. I really thought you were smarter than this, Ethan. I was frozen. Completely. Utterly. Frozen. My throat was dry. My body paralyzed. My brain screaming at me to move. To fight. To do something. But I couldn't. Jason crouched down in front of the girl, resting his arms on his knees. Did he promise he'd save you? He asked her. She didn't answer. Didn't even look at him. Jason turned back to me. Here's the deal, buddy. He gestured to the cameras, the flashing red lights, the flood of chat messages racing across the screen. These fine people, they've been watching us for a long time. And well, you just became part of the show. I shook my head. Jason, listen. Ah, he tisked, wagging a finger. You don't get to talk your way out of this. Not anymore. One of the masked men stepped forward. The machete gleamed under the light. Jason sighed, like he was actually bored. "Here's what's gonna happen, Ethan. You've got two choices." He held up a finger. "One, you pick up that knife over there." He nodded toward a blood-stained hunting knife on the floor. "And you finish what I started with Ashley." I felt like I was going to throw up. Jason grinned. "Or," he held up a second finger. "Two, you become the next contestant." The chat went wild. User, bloodbath fan. Door number 2. Door number 2. User, rotten meat. Feed him to the others. User, queen of pain. Make him run. Let's hunt. Jason leaned in close. His breath was cold against my ear. "Choose, Ethan." The girl finally spoke. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Run." I ran. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. The second that word left the girl's lips. "Run." I turned and bolted. Jason just laughed. Behind me, I heard the shuffle of boots, the low rumble of the masked men moving toward me, but I didn't look back. My feet pounded against the concrete as I sprinted toward the far end of the basement, my eyes darting wildly for an exit, an opening, anything. There was a door, rusty, metal, half hidden in the shadows. I lunged for it, grabbed the handle, twisted, locked. Fuck! I spun around just in time to see one of the masked men lunge. The machete whistled through the air, missing my face by inches. I stumbled backward, hands slamming against the doorframe. My entire body was drenched in sweat, my vision swimming. Jason was still smiling. "Good choice, Ethan," he mused, folding his arms. "I was really hoping you'd pick this one." The chat exploded. User, death dealer. LMAO. "This dude is fucked." User, hellhound. "Hunt, hunt, hunt." User, organ harvester. "Make it last longer than the last guy." A loud buzz filled the room. The locked door behind me slid open. I had no time to think, no time to process. Jason tilted his head toward the opening. "Better start running." I ran. The maze. The second I stepped through the doorway, the world changed. The basement was gone. The bright floodlights, the cameras, the chat screen. It all vanished behind a thick, suffocating darkness. I was in a tunnel. The walls were wrong, uneven, jagged, like they had been carved by hand. The smell hit me instantly. Moldavian copper. Rot. The sound of a heavy metal gate slamming shut echoed behind me. They had released me into something, and I wasn't alone. A distant wail drifted through the tunnel. Low, wet, human. I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself, my breath coming in shallow gasps. My fingers touched something warm. I yanked my hand back. The wall wasn't just rock. It was meat. My brain rejected what I was seeing, but my senses screamed the truth. The walls pulsed, the sickening texture of raw flesh shifting under my fingertips. The smell of decay thickened. Something deep inside the tunnel moved. And then, from overhead, a speaker crackled to life. Jason's voice, cheerful, excited, like a goddamn game show host. "Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to tonight's main event." The tunnel shook with the sound of thousands of people cheering. The live stream was still running. "Our dear friend Ethan has graciously accepted the challenge. He has 10 minutes to reach the exit on the other side. But," Jason's voice dropped to a teasing whisper, "he's not alone." Heavy breathing. Close. Too close. I spun around. A silhouette stood at the far end of the tunnel. Thin, emaciated, arms too long, fingers twitching in slow, jerky spasms. Its head tilted unnaturally far to one side, like the neck had been partially snapped. The skin was stretched too tight. ribs pushing against the surface like something crawling underneath. It took a step forward. I fucking ran. The first trap. I sprinted through the tunnel, my breath burning in my chest, my shoes slipping against the slick, pulsing floor. The walls shuddered, releasing a fresh gush of something wet and black that sloshed around my ankles. Behind me, laughter echoed. Jason. Run, Ethan. Run for your fucking life. I hit the first turn too fast, slammed into the corner, barely caught myself. The tunnel split in two directions, one sloping down, the other twisting into a narrow crawl space. I had seconds to decide. A new message flashed on the livestream screen, mounted into the wall. User, I for pain. Don't go down. You won't come back up. I dove into the crawl space. It was so tight, I could barely move. The walls pressed against my ribs, wet and breathing. My hand slid through something thick. I couldn't see, could barely breathe. Then, click. A wire snapped against my wrist. I barely had time to react before the ceiling above me split open. Something dropped from the darkness. A body. Number. Not just one body. Dozens. A pile of rotting corpses. They collapsed on top of me, limbs breaking apart, teeth clattering against my skin, hands twitching as if they were still alive. I screamed, shoving them away, scrambling forward through the crawl space, feeling bones snap under my palms. The air was thick with the scent of rot and old blood. I exploded out the other side, gasping, sobbing, my arms covered in filth. Behind me, the tunnel shook again. The thing was still coming. I stumbled to my feet, sprinting forward, my legs screaming with pain. The next turn revealed something worse. A door. Open. Waiting. A final message blinked on the wall screen. User. Meat locker. Don't trust it. I didn't care. I threw myself inside, and I fell. The pit. I hit the ground hard. The impact knocked the air from my lungs. My skull slammed against the concrete. My vision exploded with light. And then, the TVs turned on. Dozens of screens mounted on the walls. Footage from before. The girls. All of them. Screaming. Crying. Begging. Some tried to run. They didn't make it. Some fought back. Their bodies were left to rot in the tunnels. And then I saw myself. The live stream feed. The chat was still going wild. User, Red Room King. It's the final round. User, Night Feast. Is he gonna make it? User, Jason Rules. Did you really think this was about escaping? A door slid open. Jason stood there, smiling. Behind him, the girl from the basement. She was holding a knife. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was part of the show. And then Jason said the last words I would hear before the lights cut out completely. Final round, Ethan. Let's see how well you die. Darkness. Not the kind you get when you turn off a light. This was something worse. The kind of blackness that swallows sound, that wraps around you like a pair of hands squeezing your throat. I couldn't see anything, but I heard everything. The hissing static from the TV monitors. The faint drip, drip, drip of something thick pooling on the floor. The chat notifications pinging somewhere far above me. The unseen audience cheering like they were watching a Super Bowl halftime show. And then, footsteps, slow, methodical. Jason's voice, calm. You've done well, Ethan. Better than most. My chest heaved. The air down here was different. Damp, heavy, metallic. It crawled into my lungs, burned the back of my throat. The scent of iron, of sweat, of something dead and long forgotten. I wasn't in the tunnels anymore. I was in a room, a big one. I could feel the space around me, the way my breath echoed slightly, the way the air moved, like something was shifting in the dark. But now, it's time to see what you're really made of. A click, and then the lights came on. The arena I had been thrown into a cage. Metal bars, slick with something that looked brown-red, surrounded me. They stretched upward into nothingness, disappearing into a ceiling I couldn't see. The floor beneath me was concrete, cracked and stained dark, with years of things I didn't want to think about. The smell was worse here. Sweat, vomit, rot. Across from me, separated by another set of bars, stood the girl from the basement. Ashley. But she wasn't Ashley anymore. Her eyes were different, too wide, pupils dilated so far they swallowed the color. Her body trembled, fingers twitching at her sides. She looked hungry. A screen flickered to life above us. The live stream. Thousands of people watching, commenting, laughing. User, skin collector. She's been down there too long. She won't even hesitate. User, feast or famine. Someone remind him who she really is now. User, broken doll. What do they call them, Jason? Jason grinned from his spot outside the cage. You're right, he chuckled. I almost forgot the introduction. He turned to me. Ethan, meet your opponent. We call them... He tilted his head toward Ashley. The leftovers. She moved before I could react. The fight. No hesitation. No warning. She lunged, slamming against the metal bars with a snarl that sent shivers down my spine. Her nails scraped against the rusted metal, fingertips raw and torn open. Her mouth snapped open, bearing teeth that looked filed down to points. A choking, wet sound tore from her throat, something between a scream and a sob. Jason's voice crackled over the speakers. Poor thing's been starving for days. Do you know what happens to people when you lock them up, Ethan? When you strip them down to their instincts? Ashley's fingers wrapped around the bars. Her knuckles turned white from the force. They stop being people. The cage door slammed open, and she charged. I barely had time to react. I threw myself to the side, just as she lunged, her teeth snapping shut where my throat had been a second ago. I hit the floor hard, pain exploding up my arm. She was on me in an instant, her hands wrapped around my throat, pressing down with inhuman strength. Her lips curled back in a snarl, spit dripping from her teeth, eyes wild and empty. I kicked, hard. My foot connected with her ribs, sending her reeling back, just long enough for me to scramble to my feet. Jason laughed over the speakers. Oh, come on, Ethan. You think you can fight her off? Look at her. She's not afraid of pain anymore. I turned. Ashley was already standing again. Her ribs were caved in, her breathing ragged. But she didn't even flinch, didn't react to the pain at all. She just tilted her head back and smiled. And then I realized, this wasn't about survival. It was about the show. The chat was flooding with money, betting on how long I would last, on how she'd kill me. I wasn't a contestant. I was a prize. Ashley sprinted at me again, but this time I didn't run. I ducked, grabbing a loose metal pipe from the floor, and swung. Crack! The impact shattered her jaw. She stumbled, legs buckling. I didn't stop. I swung again, once, twice, 3 times, until her body crashed against the floor, twitching, gasping, but still trying to get back up. Jason whistled. Now, that's entertainment. I turned to him, my entire body shaking with adrenaline and horror. Let me out. Jason grinned. Ethan, Ethan, Ethan. You don't get it, do you? The screen above flickered. A new poll appeared in the chat. User, final vote. Do we let him go, or does he join the leftovers? 2 options. Let him go, 4%. Kill him, 96%. Jason clapped his hands. Welp, looks like the audience has spoken. A trapdoor opened beneath me, and I fell. The last room. I don't remember landing. All I remember is waking up in the dark, tied to a chair, cameras in my face, a screen flashing in the corner, a live chat still rolling. I wasn't a player anymore. I was content. Jason's voice whispered from the speakers, soft and final. Welcome to the leftovers, Ethan. And then the feed cut to black. I worked as physics teacher on the dark web for 10 years. One student scares me to this day with his last invention. Alright, I've kept this to myself for years, but after what I saw on the news last week, I can't stay quiet anymore. For the past 10 years, I worked as an online physics tutor. That's nothing special, right? Plenty of people do it. But what I never told anyone, not even my closest friends, is that most of my students weren't from normal schools. They were from the deep web. Yeah, I know how that sounds. Oh, another dark web horror story, sure. But listen, I'm not here to entertain you. I'm here to warn you. It started when I was in my early 20s. I had just finished my master's in physics and was drowning in student debt. I was working 2 jobs, a Starbucks barista by day, a DoorDash driver by night. It sucked. Rent in Chicago was insane, and I was barely scraping by. One night, I was on my laptop in some sketchy Reddit forums, looking for tutoring gigs. That's when I got a DM from an anonymous account. No profile picture, no post history. The message was simple. Private physics tutor needed. Pays $0.02 per hour. Cryptocurrency only. No questions asked. Now, at the time, I didn't think dark web. I just thought some rich dude who wants to stay private. And $200 an hour. That's like life-changing money. I responded. Within minutes, they sent me a link. It wasn't a normal Zoom or Google Meet link. It was some weird, custom-built video chat software. When I clicked on it, my screen glitched for a second, which should have been my first red flag. But then, boom, I was in. The screen was black at first, just a single line of text. Please confirm your identity. I hesitated. Then, a robotic voice, distorted, like an AI voice changer, spoke. Turn on your camera. My stomach dropped. I almost left the call right then, but $200 an hour. I turned it on. The moment my webcam activated, my screen split into multiple small boxes, showing 6 other people. They all had their cameras off, just blank screens with names like User481 and Lambda X. Then the robotic voice spoke again. Welcome, Professor. At this point, my heart was pounding. I wasn't a professor. I was just some broke physics grad. But before I could say anything, a chat box popped up. Lesson 1. Theoretical physics and real-world applications. The first lesson was normal. Almost too normal. I talked about quantum mechanics, black holes, time dilation, stuff I'd taught before. But the questions they asked, way too advanced. These weren't college students. These were people who already knew the material, and they weren't asking curious student questions. They were asking practical questions. If someone were to create a localized gravitational field, could it be weaponized? How would one contain a miniature black hole in a controlled environment? How much radiation could a human body withstand before immediate cellular breakdown? Now, I won't lie. I was intrigued, creeped out, but intrigued. And at the end of that lesson, I got paid $200 in Bitcoin, instantly transferred. That was enough to keep me coming back. Over the next few years, it became my full-time job. I never met my students, never knew their real names, but they paid well, and their questions got weirder and weirder. Some were clearly just bored rich kids playing with theoretical physics, but others were something else. There was one student though, one student who still haunts me to this day. His username was N_3V3R, like never, but written in that edgy hacker way. At first, he seemed like all the others, crazy smart, asked questions no normal person should ask, but something about him was different. His questions weren't just theoretical, they were practical. If I were to build a device that could suspend atoms in a fixed state, how long could I keep them there? Could electromagnetic pulses be concentrated into a single directional burst? How much energy would it take to erase an object from physical space? I told myself he was just a sci-fi nerd, a programmer maybe. But over time, I started noticing something weird. He was actually building these things. At first, I thought it was a joke. Then, one night, he turned on his camera. I never saw his face, just a dark room, lit only by a series of monitors and machinery, the sound of whirring electricity, and on the table in front of him, a device, small, sleek, looked almost like a futuristic remote control. He held it up to the camera and typed in the chat, "Watch." He pointed the device at a coffee cup on his desk. He pressed a button, and the cup vanished, not shattered, not melted. It just blinked out of existence. The screen glitched for a second. Then he typed, "It works." I left the call immediately. My heart was racing. My hands were sweating. I don't know what I saw. Some kind of camera trick, maybe. But something in my gut told me it was real. That was the last time I ever taught on the deep web. I deleted my accounts, transferred all my crypto, moved across the country. For years, I tried to forget about it. I told myself it was some elaborate prank, some weird magician kid screwing with me. But then, last week, I saw the news. A man in Tokyo had disappeared in the middle of a crowded Starbucks. Not kidnapped, not killed, just gone. 1 second, he was there. The next, nothing. His phone, his clothes, even the chair he was sitting on, all still there. But he wasn't. And the CCTV footage, it glitched, just for a second. And in that 1 second glitch, I saw something small, held in the hand of a figure in the background. Something sleek, something futuristic, something that looked exactly like Never's device. I don't know what to do. I don't know who to tell. But if this gets buried, if I disappear too, just know this. Somewhere out there, right now, someone has a device that can erase people from existence. And I think I helped him build it. I don't sleep much anymore. When I do, I see his name, N_3V3R, blinking in red on my screen. I hear the soft, mechanical click of that device, and I see that coffee cup, that Starbucks cup, vanish into thin air. Except now, it's not a cup, it's me. I wake up gasping, clawing at my own skin, half expecting my hands to just not be there anymore. But nothing, not my paranoia, not my nightmares, not my worst fears, could have prepared me for what happened next. I was home, sitting in my dimly lit apartment in Seattle, scrolling through my phone, trying to forget what I saw on the news. My notifications were flooded with the same Tokyo disappearance story. Every major news outlet was running it. Man disappears without a trace in a crowded Starbucks. No sign of struggle. No evidence of foul play. CCTV footage mysteriously glitches at the exact moment of disappearance. Experts baffled by physics-defying vanishing act. Experts. They had no idea. I did. I'd spent years teaching a faceless, nameless psychopath how to rewrite reality. I should have never answered that damn message. I should have quit the moment I realized what they were doing. But it was too late now. And then, my phone buzzed. An email. No sender. No subject. Just one line of text in the body. Check your mailbox. I didn't move at first. My chest tightened. My stomach felt like it had turned to ice. There was no way. I hadn't given my address to anyone. I had moved across the country to escape this. I had wiped my online presence, ditched my old accounts, and started fresh. But he found me. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, just staring at that email. Then, knock knock. Not a normal knock. Slow, deliberate. Like whoever was outside wanted me to feel every pause between each one. I stood up, my body moving on autopilot. Every survival instinct screamed at me to run, to pack my bags and disappear again. But I didn't. I walked to the door, barely breathing, and peered through the peephole. Nobody was there. Another knock, this time behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly lost my balance. My breath hitched in my throat. There was no door behind me, just the mail slot on my apartment door, and something had just been slipped through it. A single USB drive. I didn't want to pick it up. I didn't even want to look at it. But my hands were already moving, like I wasn't even in control anymore. I picked it up. I took it to my desk. I plugged it in. A single file appeared. No mouse.mp4. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could still unplug it. I could still throw it out the window and pretend I never saw it. But we both know that's not what I did. I clicked. The video opened. The screen was dark at first. Then static. Then footage. A warehouse. Dimly lit. Industrial. The camera was low quality, shaky, like it was being filmed on an old camcorder. In the center of the frame was a chair, and in that chair, a man, tied up, gagged. His eyes darted around, wide with panic, his chest heaving with quick, shallow breaths. Behind him, a figure stepped into view. I knew before he turned his head. Never, or whoever he really was. I had never seen his face before. Even now, it was obscured by a mask. Black, sleek, featureless, like something out of a cyberpunk nightmare. But I knew it was him. He walked around the chair, slowly, deliberately, his gloved fingers tapping against something small in his hand. Something I recognized. The device. The man in the chair started thrashing, screaming behind his gag, tears streaking down his face. Never ignored him. He turned to face the camera instead. And then, he spoke. His voice was distorted, synthetic. But the way he spoke, calm, controlled, like he was teaching a lesson. Professor, this is an experiment. I felt sick. You are always curious about the practical applications of physics, about quantum mechanics, about the limits of human perception. The camera zoomed in slightly, focusing on the man's trembling hands. Today, we will test those limits. Never lifted the device, pointing it directly at the man's left hand. The man started shaking his head violently, his muffled screams turning into desperate animalistic wails. Click. The sound was almost gentle. And his hand? Gone. No blood. No wound. It was just missing, like it had never existed. The man convulsed in the chair, his body spasming in pure, primal terror. Never tilted his head slightly, as if analyzing the results. Then he raised the device again. Click. His entire left arm disappeared. The screaming turned into something worse, something indescribable. A sound that didn't belong in this world. A sound I will never forget. The camera zoomed in again, showing the place where his arm had once been. There was nothing. No scar. No raw flesh. No wound at all. Just emptiness. Like he had never been born with an arm in the first place. Our understanding of reality is limited, never continued, his voice eerily smooth. But we can change that. We can redefine what is possible. The man in the chair had stopped struggling. He was just shaking now, his mouth moving soundlessly behind the gag. This is only the beginning, Professor. Never turned back to the camera. Then he pointed the device directly at it. Click. The video cut to static. I yanked the USB drive out so fast, I nearly snapped it in half. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. I don't know how long I sat there on the floor, shaking, staring at my own trembling hands like they weren't even mine. I tried to convince myself it was fake, some elaborate deepfake, some sick, high-budget prank, but I knew the truth. That was real. And the worst part? The final frame of the video, before it cut to static. There was something in the background, something written on the wall behind the chair, scrawled in red paint. Number, not paint. 4 words. 4 words that I will take to my grave. You are next, Professor. I didn't leave my apartment for days after watching that video. I barely ate, barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. That blank, featureless mask. The click of the device. That man's arm disappearing like it had never been there in the first place. And those words. You are next, Professor. I kept telling myself it wasn't real, that I was losing my mind, that maybe I had fallen down some deep web rabbit hole, some elaborate psychological trick, a fabricated horror meant to break me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I stopped turning on lights in my apartment at night. Every shadow felt like it had something inside it. Every noise outside my window made my skin crawl. And then, on the 4th day, my phone rang. No caller ID. I didn't want to answer. Every part of me screamed not to, but my hands moved on their own. I put the phone to my ear. Silence. At first I thought it was dead air, a prank call. Then, so faint, I almost didn't hear it. Breathing. Slow. Steady. Controlled. And then, a voice. Not distorted. Not robotic. Not masked. For the first time, I heard Never's real voice. You shouldn't have stopped teaching. I stopped breathing. You were always the best, Professor. I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. My entire body felt like it was shutting down, like my brain had forgotten how to make my lungs work. I want to show you something. Click. The line went dead. I dropped the phone. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, my vision tunneling. And then, my laptop screen turned on, by itself. The camera light blinked. I hadn't touched the keyboard. I hadn't moved the mouse. But something was controlling my screen. A window opened. A live stream. No title. No chat. No source. Just a black screen at first. And then, footage. A room. Dimly lit. Cement walls. A hotel room. A hotel room I recognized. Because I had been there before. It was the hotel I stayed at when I first moved to Seattle. A cheap, run-down place on the outskirts of the city. The kind of place where nobody asks questions. And sitting in a chair in the middle of that hotel room was me. Or at least, someone who looked exactly like me. Same face, same hair, same clothes. He sat there, staring at the camera, his expression eerily neutral, unblinking. I felt something cold slither down my spine. No. This wasn't possible. It had to be edited footage. It had to be a deepfake. But then, my double moved. He slowly lifted his right hand and held up 4 fingers, then 3, then 2, then 1. Then, the feed glitched. For half a second, the screen filled with static, and when it cleared, the chair was empty. No body, no blood, no trace that I, or whoever that was, had ever been sitting there. Just gone. Like he had been erased. My laptop screen flickered, the video ended, and then a new email appeared. I clicked it without thinking. It was a single line of text. The laws of physics don't apply anymore. Not for me. Not for you. That was it. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just some rich psycho on the dark web playing with theoretical physics. Never had gone beyond physics, beyond reality. He had made himself untouchable, untraceable, unreal, and he was proving it to me. He was rewriting existence, and I was next. The disappearances begin. After that night, I didn't sleep. I started noticing things, weird things, people around me vanishing. I would go to my usual Starbucks, the one a few blocks away, and suddenly the barista, someone I'd seen every day for the past 6 months, wasn't there anymore. Not just absent, not just sick. Nobody remembered them. I asked one of the employees, "Hey, what happened to the guy who used to work mornings here?" They just stared at me. What guy? It kept happening. A homeless man who had always sat outside my apartment building. Gone. The woman who ran the front desk at my gym. Gone. A neighbor who used to smoke on his balcony every night. Gone. No missing person reports. No news coverage. Just deleted. Like they had been wiped from the world. And the worst part, nobody else seemed to notice. It was like their existence had been erased from everyone's memory. Except mine. I was the only one who remembered them. And then, one night, I checked my phone. There was a new text message. No number. Just a message. "I'm fixing the world." I felt something inside me crack. He wasn't just erasing people at random. He was choosing, selecting. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized he had been practicing. All those years of questions, all those deep web students, all those experiments. He wasn't just testing theories. He was perfecting a system that could delete anything, anyone. And now, he was using it. I was next. I knew it. I could feel it. Every day, I woke up expecting it to be my last. I kept checking my reflection in the mirror, half expecting to see pieces of myself fading away. I started recording videos of myself, writing down my own name over and over again, just to prove I still existed. And then, one morning, I woke up, and my apartment was different. It took me a second to notice. My bookshelves, empty. My fridge, stocked with food I had never bought. The pictures on my wall, not mine. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking. The wallpaper, the photo of my parents, was gone, replaced by an image I had never seen before. A different family, a different life. I ran to my desk, opened my laptop. My name, my ID, my bank account, gone. Every trace of my existence, erased. Except, there was a folder on my desktop, a single file inside. Final lesson. I clicked it. A black screen. Then a voice. His voice. Never. You taught me everything I know, Professor. Now let me teach you something. The screen flickered. And then, I heard it. A sound I will never forget. A small mechanical click. And the world went dark. I woke up in darkness. Not the kind of darkness you get when you close your eyes. Not the kind you feel in a room with the lights off. This was absolute nothingness. No sound, no air, no gravity. Just a void stretching in all directions, endless and suffocating. At first, I thought I was blind, but then I realized I could see myself. My hands, my arms, my legs, they were all still there. Everything else was gone. No walls, no floor, no sky. I wasn't in my apartment anymore. I wasn't anywhere. I tried to breathe, but there was no air. My chest heaved, but nothing filled my lungs. And yet, I didn't die. Panic set in. I screamed, but there was no sound. My voice didn't exist here. I clawed at my own skin, slapped myself, dug my nails into my arms until I felt blood. But even the pain felt wrong, like it wasn't happening to me, like my nerves were responding to something that didn't fully exist. Then, a voice. No, not a voice. A thought. A whisper in my head. "Welcome, Professor." I knew who it was before he spoke again. Never. But this wasn't the distorted, robotic voice from before. This wasn't the smooth, casual tone he had used over the phone. This was something else. Something inhuman. Something bigger. His words didn't sound like they were being spoken. They just appeared in my head, fully formed, as if I had always known them. "Do you understand now?" I tried to respond, but my voice was still gone. "This is what's beyond." I felt something then. A presence. A shift in the nothingness. And in front of me, he appeared. Never. He wasn't wearing the mask anymore. But he had no face. Not blank. Not missing. Just nothing. Like my mind refused to process what it was seeing. Every time I tried to focus on him, my brain glitched. His shape blurred, twisted, turned into something wrong. Not a person, not a thing, just a hole in reality. He reached out. I tried to step back, but there was nowhere to go. "I've perfected it." His fingers touched my forehead, and I saw everything. The nowhere place. I saw what he had become, what I had helped him create. It wasn't just about erasing people. Not anymore. It was about rewriting existence, about bypassing reality itself. He had built something far beyond human understanding. A system, a machine, a set of rules that only he could control. And he had been using it. Everywhere. All those people who vanished, they weren't dead, they weren't missing. They had been deleted, pulled out of existence, and placed into this place. The nowhere place. I saw them. Millions. Billions. Floating in the darkness. Trapped. Some of them were screaming. Silent, endless screams that nobody would ever hear. Others were frozen, unmoving, their bodies stuck mid-motion as if time had abandoned them. And some were breaking. Their forms flickered like corrupted data, glitching in and out of existence, their bodies failing to hold together. I saw a man whose face was melting into itself, his features rearranging like a scrambled signal. A woman whose limbs twisted in impossible directions, her bones rearranging in ways that made no sense. A child split into two versions of himself, overlapping, existing in two places at once, until one half of him blinked out. And then I saw the worst ones, the ones who weren't moving at all, because they had lost their minds. People who had been here too long. Their eyes were empty, their mouths frozen in twisted, impossible expressions, silent howls of eternal terror. They weren't human anymore. They weren't anything, just echoes. Never was, still touching my forehead, his faceless void of a head tilted slightly. "Do you see now, Professor?" I tried to pull away, but my body wasn't mine anymore. I felt my skin stretch, my muscles unravel, My bones bend in ways they shouldn't. I wasn't just in the nowhere place. I was becoming part of it. You were the first teacher. Now, you will be the last lesson. I tried to scream, but I had no mouth. The rewrite. I don't know how long I was in that place. Minutes, hours, centuries. Time wasn't real there. Nothing was. But then, something changed. The darkness rippled. And suddenly, I was back. Back in my apartment. The lights were on. My laptop was open. My phone was buzzing on the table. Like nothing had happened. Like I had just woken up from a nightmare. Except, something was wrong. I looked down at my hands, my arms, my reflection in the black screen of my laptop. It was me, but not me. I felt different, like something had been edited. I opened my mouth to speak, but my own voice sounded off, like an echo of itself. My phone buzzed again. A message. Lesson complete. I didn't touch it. I didn't move. Because I knew in that moment I wasn't the same person anymore. I had been rewritten, and I didn't know what I was now. I don't think I'm human anymore. I still look like myself. My hands move when I tell them to. My reflection blinks when I do. But something is wrong. I can feel it. It's like I'm wearing a mask of my own face, like I'm piloting a body that isn't really mine. And the worst part, I don't know what's different. I don't know what never changed, but I know he changed something, and that terrifies me more than anything else. The glitch in reality. I tried to ignore it at first, tried to tell myself it was paranoia, trauma, a bad dream, but then I started noticing the glitches, small at first, barely noticeable, a flicker in the corner of my vision, a shadow that shouldn't be there, a pause in time that lasted just a fraction too long, and then bigger ones. I would reach for my coffee mug and my hand would pass right through it. I would check my phone and the time would jump backward, then forward, then freeze completely. I walked past a mirror once, and for half a second, my reflection didn't move. And then, the people around me, they started acting strange. At first, it was little things. The cashier at McDonald's staring at me too long. The barista at Starbucks handing me a coffee I hadn't ordered, with my name already written on it. A homeless man on the street whispering my name, even though I had never seen him before. But then they started changing. I was walking home one night when I saw a man standing on the sidewalk, perfectly still. He wasn't looking at me, wasn't even acknowledging me, just standing there, rigid, like a frozen frame in a pause video. I walked past him, and as I did, his head snapped toward me, not turned, not moved, snapped, like he had teleported into a different pose. His mouth was moving, but no sound came out. His eyes, completely white. And then, just as suddenly, he went back to normal. Like nothing had happened, like he had reset. I ran. The people who don't exist. I started paying attention after that, watching people closely, looking for the errors, and once I noticed them, I couldn't unsee them. People glitching, faces changing when I wasn't looking, conversations looping, a man ordering food at a food truck, then stepping out of line, and suddenly being back in line again, a woman on a park bench tying her shoe, standing up, then suddenly being back on the bench, retying the same shoe. And then I saw something that nearly made me lose my mind. I was on the subway, gripping the metal pole, when I saw a man sitting across from me, scrolling on his phone. Normal guy, hoodie, sneakers, nothing weird. But then, his face changed, not like someone aging, not like someone moving, like one frame had been swapped for another. 1 second, he was a bearded guy in his 30s. The next second, he was clean-shaven. Then, back to the beard. Then, no face at all, just smooth, empty skin. I blinked, and he was back to normal, scrolling his phone like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just stopped existing for a moment. And that's when I realized, this world isn't real anymore. Never changed it. He rewrote something fundamental. And now, people are breaking. I don't think I'm alive. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping, because I started thinking, what if I'm not even real? What if I never escaped the nowhere place? What if I'm just another glitch in this broken version of reality? I tested it. One night, I grabbed a knife from my kitchen and pressed the tip against my palm. I hesitated. Then, I stabbed down. The knife went through me, not into. Through. No blood, no pain, like I was made of air. I stared at my hand for a long time, watching the blade just pass through my skin, like I was a hologram. Then, I let the knife fall to the floor, and I laughed, because that was it. That was the final proof. I'm not me anymore. Never rewrote me. I don't know what I am, but I know I'm not human. The lost message. I don't go outside anymore. I don't talk to people, because I know now that this world is broken, and sooner or later, I will break too. My phone buzzed a few hours ago. One last message. From him. From Never. You were my greatest teacher. Now you are my greatest creation. I don't know what he meant, but I think I finally understand. I wasn't erased. I was remade. I wasn't deleted. I was rebuilt. And now, I don't belong here anymore. I think I'm going to glitch out. Just like the others. Just like the world. Just like everything he changed. And when I do, there won't be anything left of me. Not even a memory. Not even a name. Just gone. Like I never existed in the first place. Like I was never real. Like I was never. Someone sings to my daughter at night. I found out on the dark web who, I don't know if I'll ever recover from this. You ever experience something so disturbing that it makes you question your own reality? Like it forces you to rethink everything, your safety, your home, your loved ones. Yeah, that's where I'm at. And no matter how much I try to forget, I can still hear it. That goddamn singing. I live in a small 2-bedroom apartment just outside of Chicago with my 6-year-old daughter, Ellie. It's not much, but it's ours, and we've made the best of it. Her mom left when she was a baby, so it's just been me and her. And despite the struggles, we've always been okay. Until now. I work night shifts as a security guard in a high-rise downtown. Not the most exciting job, but it pays the bills. Since I'm gone at night, my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, keeps an eye on Ellie. She's sweet, the typical old lady type. Always baking, always watching those crime documentaries with a weird amount of interest. 3 weeks ago, I got home at around 3:30 a.m. The second I walked through the door, something felt off. The air was warm. Not just warm. Sticky, humid, like someone had been breathing heavily in the room for hours. And there was this smell. Not rotten, not sewage, but something else. Something wrong. Like old flowers and damp wood. Like something that had been left to decay in a house no one had lived in for years. I shook it off, walked down the hall, and peeked into Ellie's room like I always do. She was asleep, curled up, breathing softly, but her window was unlocked. That was weird. I always keep her window locked. It's an old building, sure, but I double check it every single night before I leave. I locked it again, told myself, maybe I was just exhausted, maybe I forgot. Then I went to bed. The next night, it happened again. I got home, checked Ellie's room, and her window was unlocked. Again, I locked it, harder this time. I pulled on it to make sure it was secure. I even shoved a chair in front of it, just in case. Then, as I turned to leave, I heard something through the baby monitor. Yeah, I still use a baby monitor. I know she's 6, but it helps me sleep, knowing I can hear her if anything happens. But what I heard wasn't Ellie. It was a voice, software, breathy, singing. The words weren't clear, but the tune was slow and unnatural, like whoever was singing didn't care about the melody, just about whispering the words over and over. I froze. I stared at Ellie, still sleeping, her little chest rising and falling peacefully. The singing was still going. I grabbed the monitor, my hands shaking, and pressed the volume up. The voice got louder, and then it stopped. The room plunged into silence. I looked around, my heart beating so hard it hurt. I checked the closet, under the bed, even inside the tiny toy chest. Nothing. But then I noticed something. Ellie's lips were moving. I leaned down, heart in my throat. She was mumbling something in her sleep. I got close enough to hear her whisper, "Good night, Ariel." The next morning, I asked her about it. "Ellie," I said, pouring her cereal, trying to keep my voice light, "do you remember having any dreams last night?" She nodded, swinging her legs under the table. "Yeah." "What were they about?" She took a bite of her cereal, chewed, swallowed. "My friend. She comes to see me at night." I gripped my coffee cup. "What friend?" Ellie grinned. "Ariel." My stomach dropped. "Who's Ariel?" Ellie looked at me like I was stupid. "She lives in my room." I tried to keep my voice calm. "Oh? And what does she look like?" Ellie shrugged, swinging her spoon around. "She has a long white dress. Her hair is all messy. She sings to me when I can't sleep." My hands went ice cold. I forced a laugh. "What does she sing?" Ellie chewed her lip like she was thinking. Then she hummed something. The same tune I heard through the monitor. I almost dropped my coffee. I didn't want to scare her, so I just nodded and changed the subject. But for the rest of the day, I felt sick, like something had already wormed its way into our lives, and I was too late to stop it. That night, I decided to test something. I set up my phone to record audio while I was gone. Just let it sit there, screen down on Ellie's dresser, running all night. I got home at 3:45 a.m., locked the door, kicked off my boots, and immediately grabbed my phone. My hands were shaking as I pressed play. For the first hour, nothing, just soft breathing, Ellie shifting in bed. Then, at 2:47 a.m., the recording picked up movement, the sound of the window unlocking. I felt like I was gonna throw up. Then I heard the singing. It was louder this time, closer, like someone was right next to the phone. I turned up the volume, pressing the phone against my ear. The voice was low, breathy, almost too slow to be human. And then it stopped. Silence. For a long time, nothing but Ellie's breathing. Then, at 2:49 a.m., Ellie spoke in her sleep. But it wasn't just "Good night, Ariel," this time. Number. This time, she whispered something else. And I swear to God, I felt my whole body go numb when I heard it. Because in the softest, sleepiest voice, my 6-year-old daughter whispered something right into the microphone. Something impossible. Daddy shouldn't listen. I shut off my phone so fast I almost threw it. My stomach twisted into knots, because that wasn't just Ellie's voice. There was another voice, whispering with her, and it was laughing. I don't think I've ever been truly afraid before. Not like this. You know that feeling when your whole body locks up, when the air turns thick and you swear something is breathing right next to you, but you can't see it. That's where I'm at. That's where I've been for the past few weeks. And I think I'm losing my mind, because whatever's happening to Ellie isn't normal, and I don't think it's human. That night, I sat in my room, phone in my hand, replaying the audio over and over. I must have listened to it 100 times. Every time, it was the same. The slow, raspy singing, the window unlocking, Ellie's voice, soft and sleepy, and that other voice, the one that wasn't hers, the one that whispered, "Daddy shouldn't listen," right as it let out that horrible breathy laugh. I didn't sleep. How could I? I sat in bed, knife under my pillow, eyes locked on the baby monitor, watching, listening, waiting, but nothing happened. The next morning, I was barely holding it together. My head pounded, my hands shook, and my nerves were completely shot. But Ellie was fine. She woke up smiling, happy, normal, like she hadn't spent the night whispering to something that shouldn't exist. I tried to act casual, to not freak her out. "Hey, kiddo," I said, forcing a smile. "You sleep okay?" She nodded, stretching her arms. "Yeah," Ariel sang to me again. My stomach clenched. "Oh?" I kept my voice light. "What did she sing?" Ellie hummed the same haunting tune I heard in the recording. Exactly the same. I felt my blood run cold. Then, Ellie did something that made my skin crawl. She tilted her head, eyes locked on mine, and whispered, "She likes you, Daddy." My mouth went dry. "She does?" Ellie giggled. "Yeah. She says you're watching too much, though." I stared at her. "She says," Ellie continued, voice dropping into a low, almost mocking tone, "you shouldn't listen if you don't want to see." I felt sick. I grabbed Ellie's shoulders, too hard, too desperate. "Ellie," I whispered. "Who is Ariel?" She blinked up at me, innocent, confused. Then she shrugged. "She's my night friend. I took the day off work, cold and sick. I had to figure out what the hell was going on. I started by tearing Ellie's room apart. I checked everywhere, under the bed, behind the dresser, inside the closet. Nothing. The window was still locked from last night. No scratches, no footprints, no sign that anyone had ever been there. But I knew someone had. Or something. I scrolled through security camera options, looking for something that would give me night vision, motion detection, audio alerts, anything to catch whoever was coming in. I spent $300 on the best one I could find, had it shipped same-day delivery, and installed it before sundown. Then I waited. That night, I made sure Ellie was asleep before I checked the feed. The camera was perfect, crystal clear video, night vision so sharp I could see every detail of her room, the little unicorn stickers on her wall, the messy pile of stuffed animals in the corner, even the way her blankets rose and fell with every breath. I watched. For hours, I watched. And then, at 2:47 a.m., the motion sensor went off. The window, it was unlocking, but no one was there. I felt a sharp, stabbing fear in my gut. I leaned closer, staring at the screen, my own breath caught in my throat. The lock slid open. Then the window pushed up, inch by inch, and the room changed. The air, even through the camera, seemed to shift, like a shadow was creeping in. something thick and suffocating filling the space. And then Ellie. She sat up, not slow, not groggy. She just sat up, all at once, like someone had yanked her up by invisible strings. Her head tilted, her eyes were open, but she wasn't awake. Then, from the corner of the room, the singing started. I swear to God, I felt it. It wasn't just sound. It was like the air in my own room grew heavy, like something was breathing right behind me, whispering straight into my skull. The singing was wrong. It bent in places it shouldn't bend, cracked in places a human voice wouldn't crack. It was high and low at the same time, like multiple voices layered on top of each other, dragging the tune out into something slow, unnatural, almost mocking. And then Ellie spoke, but not in her voice. It came out too deep, too slow, and the words she said made my whole body lock up with pure cold horror. He's watching us. And the voice that came next, it wasn't hers. It wasn't human. It was right next to the camera, and it whispered, "I know." Then the screen went black. I don't remember grabbing my bat. I don't remember running down the hall, nearly tripping over myself as I threw open Ellie's door. But when I got there, she was alone. The window was locked, and she was lying down, sleeping peacefully, like nothing had happened. But the room smelled wrong. That same funeral home smell, that thick, cloying scent of old flowers and damp earth. I staggered back, chest heaving. My heart was beating so hard, I thought it would explode. I checked the camera feed again. The video was gone, deleted. Only one file remained, a still image. I clicked it, and for a long time, I just stared. At the dark corner of Ellie's room, at the long white dress, at the tangle of black hair, at the thing crouching beside her bed, whispering into her ear, at the two hands, thin and rotting, reaching toward the camera, and at the message, written in red across Ellie's wall, a message that wasn't there when I walked in. You shouldn't have watched. There are moments in life where fear is just a passing thing, a shadow in the dark that turns out to be a coat hanging in your closet, a creak in the floorboards that's just the house settling. But then there are moments when fear becomes something else, something alive. That's where I am now, living inside fear, because I know now. This isn't a dream. This isn't a glitch. Something is inside my home. Something is inside my daughter. And I think it's been here for a long time. After what happened with the camera, I lost it. I tore Ellie's room apart again, but this time, I wasn't just looking for footprints or fingerprints. I was looking for something I didn't want to find. And I did. Behind Ellie's bed, where the wallpaper met the baseboards, there were scratches, deep, jagged gouges in the wood, not like a kid playing around. These were thin and deliberate, as if someone had been using fingernails to carve them. And I knew Ellie hadn't done this. I counted them, 27 scratches, 27 nights, 27 times it had been here, sitting in the dark with her. I felt my throat tighten, bile rising up. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. Every muscle in my body was screaming to run, to get Ellie, and never come back. But where the hell would I go? What do you do when the thing in your house doesn't need to break in? What do you do when it's already inside your child? I didn't go to work that night. Instead, I sat in the kitchen, laptop open, digging through every paranormal forum I could find. r/no sleep, r/the truth is here, r/glitch in the matrix. None of them helped. Everyone had theories. Some said ghosts, some said demons, some said a glitch in reality itself. But one comment stood out. It was short, simple. Check the dark web. Normally I wouldn't even consider it. I knew about the dark web, the real one, not the horror movie version. It's not just some underground website where you can buy haunted dolls and cursed relics. It's worse. So much worse. It's where people go to find things they aren't supposed to see. Where people disappear and no one even asks why. But I was desperate. So I did it. I downloaded Tor, got myself a VPN, and went in. I don't know what I was expecting. Some creepy forum, a bunch of fake ghost stories. What I wasn't expecting was a video. The link popped up in my inbox an hour after I posted. No username, no message, just a link labeled "for you." I clicked it, and I wish to God I hadn't. The screen went black. Then, after a few seconds, grainy security footage appeared. An apartment, a bedroom, Ellie's bedroom. My stomach dropped. The camera wasn't one of mine. It was hidden, positioned from the ceiling, angled directly down at Ellie's bed. And the timestamp, 20 minutes ago. The video started playing. I watched, frozen, as Ellie's small body stirred under the blankets. Then, 2:47 a.m. The window unlocked. My pulse pounded so hard it hurt. The frame creaked open, and then something crawled inside. Not walked, not climbed, crawled. Long pale arms slithered over the window frame first, like a spider feeling its way into a new home. Then the hair, stringy, wet, hanging in thick, rotting clumps. I couldn't breathe. The thing lowered itself inside, slow and soundless, folding its body in unnatural ways as it settled into the darkness of the room. Then it stood up, and I saw its face, or what was left of it. There was a mouth, but no lips, just a black, gaping hole that stretched too wide, filled with something that looked too jagged, too sharp to be teeth. Its nose was nothing more than two deep, hollow slits, like someone had torn the cartilage straight off. And the eyes, Jesus, the eyes, they weren't human. They weren't even alive. They were just holes, empty sockets, dripping with something thick and black, staining its cheeks like wet ink. And then it turned to the camera. Not Ellie, not the room. It knew I was watching, and when it moved fast. The screen jerked, like the camera was being knocked over. For a split second, I saw Ellie sit up in bed. Her mouth opened, too wide, too unnatural, and that horrible voice spilled out of her throat. A voice that was two voices, a voice that wasn't hers. Stop watching. The screen went black. I sat there shaking, hands clenched so tight my knuckles turned white. I slammed the laptop shut. My heart was pounding. My body wasn't even my own anymore. I felt detached, like I was floating outside myself. I ran to Ellie's room. She was asleep, perfect, peaceful. Her tiny hand curled under her chin, but the window, unlocked, and on the floor, beside her bed, was a single white flower. It wasn't from here, not from this world. The petals were soft and pale, but the edges melted into something dark, something ink-like, spreading slowly like decay. I picked it up. The second my fingers touched the stem, my ears started ringing. A sound so loud and high-pitched, it felt like my skull was splitting open, and underneath it, the singing, whispering, crawling inside my head like a parasite. And then, a voice, low, right against my ear, so close I could feel the breath on my neck. You shouldn't have looked for me. I spun around, but I was alone. Ellie was still sleeping. The room was still empty, but the flower was gone. and my reflection in the window. It wasn't mine. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at my own reflection, the one that wasn't mine. It wasn't just that my face looked wrong. It was the way it moved. When I breathed, it didn't. When I blinked, it stared. And when my mouth hung open in horror, the thing in the glass smiled. A wide, black gash of teeth and darkness that didn't belong to me. I stumbled backward, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. My legs felt weak, my vision blurred at the edges, but I didn't stop moving until I hit the hallway. Then, as fast as it had appeared, it was gone. Just my normal reflection again. My pale, sweating face, my wide, bloodshot eyes. But in my ears, the ringing remained, and beneath it, the whispering, software, laughing, singing. I turned and ran. I locked myself in my bedroom. My whole body felt tainted, infected, like something was already inside me. I needed answers. I needed to know what the hell was happening. So, like an idiot, I went back to the dark web. The link to Ellie's room was gone. No traces of the video. No messages. No proof it had ever existed. But something else had appeared in my inbox. Another link. The listings. I shouldn't have clicked it. I knew deep down that I wasn't going to find anything good. But I was too far gone now. Too desperate. Too infected by this thing that had wormed its way into my daughter's life. I clicked the link, and I wish I had gouged my own eyes out before I saw what was waiting for me. The page was black. A countdown at the top of the screen ticked down in red numbers. 2:14:32 until next listing. The rest of the page was just a long list of names, ages, prices. At first, my mind couldn't understand what I was looking at. It was like my brain refused to process it. Then I saw the videos, short clips, children sleeping, children crying, some curled up in dark, empty rooms, some lying in beds just like Ellie's, unaware of the cameras watching them. My whole body went numb. This wasn't a ghost. This wasn't a demon. This was something worse. My shaking hand scrolled down the page, and then I saw it. Ellie's picture, her full name, her age, and the bidding price, $90,000. I stopped breathing. For a second, my brain completely shut down, because this wasn't just some paranormal entity playing tricks on me. This was real. Ellie wasn't being haunted. She was being hunted. I clicked her video. My hands felt like ice. It played instantly. It was her, sleeping peacefully in bed. The same footage I had seen on my hacked security camera. But this time, there was something else. A second figure in the room. Not just standing there, sitting on her bed, its long skeletal fingers brushing through her hair. And then, suddenly, the video cut to live footage. My stomach dropped. Ellie wasn't sleeping anymore. She was awake. Her tiny body sat upright in bed, perfectly still, perfectly silent. Her eyes stared straight ahead, but she wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking past it, as if she was watching something behind me. My whole body locked up. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. And then, as I sat there frozen in horror, Ellie's lips moved. A whisper. I couldn't hear it, but I could read it. 3 words. He's watching you. My laptop shut itself off. The screen went black, and behind me, in the darkness of my bedroom, I heard it. Breathing. Slow. Deep. Not human. I turned my head, but before I could see, the lights in my apartment cut out. Pitch black. Dead silence. And then, from down the hall, from Ellie's room, the window unlocked, and the singing started again. There's a type of fear that doesn't just paralyze you, it rots you from the inside. It changes you. It rewires something deep in your brain, takes the part of you that believes in safety, in logic, in reality itself, and it rips it apart. That's what happened to me. That's what is happening to me, because I heard the window unlock. I heard the singing start, and I couldn't move. I sat in my room, laptop dead, apartment pitch black, my own breath strangling me. The air felt thick, too full, as if something had already crawled into my lungs and settled there. Then, slowly, too slowly, I forced myself to stand. I turned towards the hallway, and from the end of it, from Ellie's room, the light clicked on. But it wasn't her. I knew it wasn't her, because the glow that spilled into the hallway wasn't normal. It wasn't the soft yellow of her nightlight. It was white, pale, rotten, like the light from a room that shouldn't exist. And then, in the doorway, I saw her, Ellie. She was standing there, but her arms hung limp at her sides, her head tilted too far, almost resting on her own shoulder. And her eyes, oh God, her eyes were gone, not missing, not hollow, just black, deep, endless pools of thick, wet black dripping down her cheeks, soaking into her pajama top. She opened her mouth, and the singing came out. But it wasn't her voice. It wasn't any voice. It was wrong. Multiple voices, whispering and moaning, curling around each other in a twisted, hollow mockery of a song. And behind the sound, beneath it, inside it, something was laughing. I stepped back, shaking my head. My body screamed to run, but my feet were cemented to the floor. Ellie? My voice was shredded, broken. She smiled, but it wasn't her smile. It was too wide, too stretched, too full of jagged, shadowy teeth. And then, something stepped out behind her. Something tall, something wrong. It unfolded from the shadows, like it had been there the whole time, like it had been part of the darkness itself. Long, thin arms draped around her shoulders, fingers stretching too far, curling like hungry roots digging into her skin. The head, if you could call it that, tilted, shifting with a slow, wet crack, and then it spoke, not out loud, inside my head, inside my fucking bones. You shouldn't have watched. The second I heard it, my body collapsed, my legs buckled, my vision blurred, a sound like screaming and static, and a million voices shrieking at once exploded inside my skull. I tried to breathe, but I couldn't. Something wrapped around my throat. Not hands, not fingers. Something worse. Something inside me. I could feel it, digging through my veins, twisting through my chest, pulling me into something deeper than the room, deeper than the apartment, deeper than the world itself. And Ellie just watched, her lips still moving, that horrible sound spilling from her throat, like she wasn't even human anymore, like she had never been human to begin with. And then, the light went out. I woke up to the sound of knocking, not inside my apartment, outside, the front door. I gasped awake, gagging, shaking, my entire body soaked in sweat. For a moment, I just lay there on the floor, trying to understand where I was, what had happened, what was real. Then the knocking came again, louder, harder. I stumbled to my feet. The apartment was silent. The hallway was empty. Ellie's door was shut, and the light, the horrible, rotten glow from inside her room, was gone. I turned toward the front door, and for some reason, I knew before I even got there. I knew who it would be. I reached for the knob, turned it, pulled the door open, and outside, standing in the dim, flickering glow of the hallway lights, was Ellie. She was alone. Her pajamas were soaked. Her hair was tangled and wet. She was shivering, and her eyes, her perfect human eyes, were filled with tears. "Daddy?" Her voice was small, weak. "I was lost," she whispered. "I was so lost." I grabbed her, pulled her into my arms, into my chest, into my soul, into everything I had left. I sobbed. I held her like she would disappear again if I let go. She was cold. So cold. And when I lifted her into my arms and carried her inside, she buried her face into my neck and whimpered, "I don't want to go back." I froze. My grip tightened. I pulled back, staring at her, searching her face, her trembling lips, her wide, terrified eyes. And then her breath hitched. She looked behind me. Her eyes went so wide they nearly swallowed her whole, and she whispered, so soft I almost didn't hear it, "Who is that?" A breath of cold air kissed the back of my neck, and from the darkness of the hallway, I heard it, singing, software, slow, right behind me, right against my ear.